Fruitful Living with Sissel Anderson. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're talking with Sissel Anderson on fruitful living and kind of the spirit of fruitfulness in general. Good morning, Sissel.
Good morning, Keith. How are we doing on this Wednesday?
Doing pretty well, blessed. And I was just thinking, like, going through the fruits of the Holy Spirit, for whatever reason, faithfulness I don't think about too often, and I don't know why. I'm not sure.
Yeah, when I originally was going through the fruits and I heard faithfulness, at first I thought, A, I don't know if I have much to say on that. And then B, I was like, wait a second. Because faith and faithfulness are, kind of two different things. And so I was trying to figure out, well, how would I talk about it? But every once in a while, God surprises. Well, he always surprises me, but he surprises me this time with how to kind of go into the subject of faithfulness and the fruit of faithfulness. And I got to first ask you, have you ever heard of the band AJR?
AJR. I can't say that it rings a bell for me. No.
All right. Well, they are a current group right now. They are a little bit more on the indie side, but they have had a few songs that have become very popular. And I think I've made it on the hits radio stations and things like that. And it's a group of three brothers, and they have a tendency of writing songs, not romantic songs. They tend to they want to be more creative and write on deeper subjects and things like that. And some of them are really good. Some of them are, maybe a little bit questionable on the morality or things like that. But they came out with a song last year that is called God is Really Real. So I'm curious, what do you think their take is on that in that song?
God is really real. I don't want to be cynical, but I feel like, you mentioned they're creative and kind of trying to I don't know. Please explain it, because I have no idea.
So to give some context before, I'm going to read a little bit of the lyrics, but to give some context for the song and why they wrote the song was dedicated to their dad who was dying of lung cancer. They come from a Jewish background, I don't believe very practicing. So just so you have an idea of what their worldview was maybe when they were writing this particular song. But I heard it again the other day, and it made me think a little bit more because, you sometimes you hear a song and you're like, okay, that's a little questionable, but you don't really think much more of that. But the chorus of the song goes, God is really real when you really, really need him. Karma just appears when you suddenly believe it. Hear it loud and clear just as long as it's convenient. And then life's long till it stops and God's fake till he's not. Now, there are some more creative words in there, let's put it that way, that I am skipping over just in case anyone should go to look this up. There's a cleaner version, but just so you know. But that is, those are the lyrics. That is the chorus. A lot of the song is talking about their dad being unable to get out of bed because of how ill he is and just being upset and angry, obviously, about that whole situation. But I thought about it when I was reading over the lyrics again. I was like, wait a second. They're criticizing a culture that really does exist. They're criticizing this idea that probably a lot of Christians they've seen have been following a God of convenience. They haven't been living out the faith every single day and haven't been prioritizing faith in the way that we all should be. And so it's not that I'm sitting here saying yes, good job AJR for that, but I think it's important to know okay, there is some truth in that. That's why I think it's important sometimes to have some idea of what's going on in the culture, because songs like these really do show where especially young people are at. Because I think that's a pretty common view is that, well, you Christians, you only really are following God when it's convenient for you. You're only shouting out things from the Bible when you're all angry and upset. But what about how you treat your neighbor and things like that? And that is a fair point. Not to say that all of us are going to be perfect all the time. The faith life is a struggling life, and we are going to make so many mistakes. We are going to fall into sin. But I think it highlights the fact that living out the faithful life isn't just, when times go bad, we reach out to God. It's also just every single day thanking God for what we have and inviting him into our every moment. Are we, when we're planning out our weekend, are we sitting here going, oh, I have this, and this to do. And then it's like, oh, and I think I can squeeze mass in there somewhere. Or is it, this is when I have to go to mass. This is when I'm going to go to mass, and everything else is going to be planned around that. Is our prayer time and during the day the same way? Are we saying, I guess I can maybe squeeze in 5 minutes here, Or is it, no, this is the priority and this is what I'm going to do to rearrange my schedule for that? And I'd argue that most of the time we don't do that, and that's myself included. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Keith?
Yeah, I think immediately of history, like, if you look back, a few hundred years ago, the faith was so prevalent that it's nothing like it is today, where everything is secular, and we have to be intentional with our time and make sure that we go to Mass on Sundays and maybe even try to go to Mass on the weekdays when we can, because like it's our culture isn't Catholic anymore. It's all secular. So in some ways, being treating that fruit of the Holy Spirit of faithfulness, I would say, is more difficult than it's ever been.
No, I would definitely agree. I mean, we're even getting into a time, really, and especially there's a very vibrant Catholic community here in the southern part of the United States, actually, but it's definitely more of a traditionally northern a cultural thing. But so nowadays, you can even go, like my friends and I were out at Cava for lunch on a Friday a while ago, and so we're all having to go through and order vegetarian options on a Friday in Lent. And the girl, when she gets to like the seventh person, she's just like, "Are y'all all vegetarian?" and my friend's like, "Oh no, well, like today, yes, we are. We're Catholic and it's Lent." And she goes, "Oh, people don't even like register. That used to be just such a known thing, that Fridays in Lent, like in Fridays in general, that's why there's fish specials. That's why the Filet-O-Fish exists." That's not even really registering, I think, to most people anymore. So yeah, it's definitely takes a little bit more. But I'd also argue that a lot of young people today, they do not buy. They're pretty cynical. We can be the Generation Z and the future generations can be a little bit cynical, and they want real. They don't want, that's why they call out, that's why like AJR, because they're very much of this generation, they're calling out this half living faith life. They're like, don't give me that. Don't give me like, this is only when you're convenient. Don't like throw the Bible in my face when I know you're not living it all the time. And they want to see the real. They want to see the consistent. And thankfully, the Catholic faith is so consistent across the board on all of our teachings. And we just need to do better as the faithful to be living that faithful life. And it's easy sometimes when the times are really, really good to, to say, "Oh, Jesus, thank you so much. This is awesome." Some people find it easier when times are really bad to be more active in their faith life because, you're just reaching out for anything. Most people when faced with like a really terrifying situation call out for God. But how much more beautiful, and there's beauty, of course, in that moment of them saying, "Oh my goodness, I recognize that there is a God who I need desperately in this moment." But how much more beautiful is that daily, day after day struggle and fight to prioritize faith in our day. So that's just at least my thoughts anyway. There's a quote from Mother Teresa that says, "God does not demand that I be successful. God demands that I be faithful. When facing God, results are not important. Faithfulness is what is important." I frequently see it, and especially when we're thinking about young people and what they're going to do in life and the pressures that are sometimes put on them when we're coming from the high school to college to work life, there's this, or whatever it may be, there is that pressure of, well, what are you going to do in this particular timeline that the world has set up, that by this age, you should be making this much money, you should have this house, of this size, you should have this many kids. And the truth of the matter is like, that's really not how it works for a lot of people. And so then you feel a little bit like a failure if you don't fall into that path. And parents can unintentionally put that pressure, I think, on their kids too, by just following what's going on in the world. When in reality, all we need to be following is, are you day by day prioritizing God? Are you praying every single day? And are you able to then make wise decisions in discernment on what it is that we're supposed to be doing? And it might not be, the 6-digit job by 30. It might not be that, actually. And so I think we as, Christians should do a better job of not just showing it to the world that we are consistently being faithful, but it's for ourselves as well, for our daily faith life, is that's what's going to benefit us on our journey to heaven.
And it's so true. Like, our culture is so attached to having that successful career and making all of this money. Like, the whole grind set mentality. I can't even tolerate it anymore because it's godless.
It so is, and it's unfortunate because it really still is very prevalent in Catholic circles too, unfortunately, because again, we're just all stuck on that mindset of, well, this is what success is measured by. And, no, success, like your kid could be maybe just making just enough money to survive, which is fine. That's actually okay. We can normalize that, but they're living the most faithful life that they can. Then that's what we should be desiring and hoping for our kids, for ourselves, for our friends.
Yeah, and Saint Joseph is a perfect example. He was a carpenter, but he wasn't this amazingly successful, built an empire of, carpentry. It's just
didn't have it all across, Galilee was the Saint Joseph carpentry shop.
He provided for his family, he protected them. But he lived a life of simplicity, and we always look to our saints, I feel like, because they're the ones that are successful ultimately at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. We should not put the pressure on ourselves because that's distracting us from what is actually important.
Yes, it's all a distraction. So speaking of distractions, I would say that, that whole entity is kind of what is a big struggle for today. What would you say? I mean, there's probably many ways to overcome the struggle of distraction from faithfulness, but do you have any pro tips or suggestions on how we can overcome that particular setup?
Not that I am at all any expert, but I can tell you what I've done and haven't done that have worked well or not worked well more often than not. One thing I do like to do every once in a while is kind of spend a week where I really just write down everything I've done in my day, and I can have an idea of what time I spent on things unimportant and what time I spent on things that were important. So maybe just journaling that for a week and just reprioritizing, like, how am I looking at my life? Am I looking at my life of what can I do for God, or am I just filling it with things that are unnecessary?
Wow. It's always good to get a fresh take on some of these things, Sissel. So thank you so much for joining us on Fruitful Living. But hey, out there listeners, stick around, because we have two very energetic guests coming up in the next hour. If you're listening on Catholic Spirit Radio, but if you're listening on Guadalupe Radio Network, we're going to send you on over to the Share-a-thon, and it's actually going to be my first debut of being on the Share-a-thon. I'm excited. I'm going to be on with Sissel Anderson as well. It's going to be great. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, regardless, we are here every single weekday at 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern. So if I don't see you until tomorrow, make it a joyful day. God bless. We'll see you then.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.